Hello, happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Hope you're enjoying the Sunday wherever you are so far. This is the New Europeans Q&A brought to you by the subscribers of the New European. And you should join them if you're not a subscriber.
You certainly should.
Should we kick off?
Yeah, absolutely. Loved the episode with Adam Bolton. Could British broadcasting be licensed, similar to being called to the bar? I would imagine it protects the integrity of journalism, sets a standard, differentiates from YouTubers, and puts professional and financial risk on the individual instead of hiding behind corporations that can simply pay a fine from Ofcom. Would need to mitigate against impingement on freedom of expression, of course. Too commie? Asks Tex on Spotify. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if it's too commie. I just think it's sort of too exclusive. There's no easy answer to this. I mean, there was, when I was growing up, you had the NCTJ,
Yes.
National Council for the Training of Journalists, standard kind of exams, and you had to pass exams in how councils worked, how courts worked, so, and you had a working knowledge of the law. Also, controversially, at least in my view, you had to have 100 words per minute shorthand to get your certificate. And I never got that.
No,
I was
neither did I.
way beyond me, the shorthand thing. And up until recently, there were a series of, I mean, they may still believe this, a series of quite well-respected editors making the case for why they would never take on a junior journalist if they didn't have 100 words per minute shorthand. I just thought, this is mental illness, this. It's like, it means it counts for nothing unless you're going to be a court reporter, and even that is getting eroded and eroded. But there was this kind of certificate that you needed, and as the means of production of journalism opened up, i.e. you didn't need a Rupert Murdoch style organisation behind you. You know, you could sit there and you could broadcast on the internet, you could do all of this. All of that became more or less meaningless. And I do think on the whole, journalism should be better for that being opened up to new voices. But I also equally, I do know where Dex is coming from, because there's a lot of activism masquerading as journalism.
Well, Tommy Robinson calls himself
a journalist. You know, I mean, there are people who, I don't know what a journalist is anymore.
Well, you know? When I started, I always thought of it as a trade rather than a profession, and better for it. Yeah. Because it struck me as something where there were some skills to acquire, and most of them were acquired on the job. And this was pre, the internet really becoming a thing. So it struck me as straightforward that you had to be able to master all of those things. Whether or not you actually had a qualification was up for discussion, but obviously you had to know about journalism law and things like that. But then, you were taught by very, very brilliant people who, done it the hard way, how to write an intro. And I found that very, very, it was terrifying to start with, but it was really good. Then along came, as you say, basically the means of production costs zero or near zero. So the idea of having to be part of a kind of Fordist factory goes. Yeah. And I guess that the consequence which Dex is referring to, which is real, is what you just said, which is, well, what's a journalist anymore? I don't think that us becoming like barristers or American doctors who have to take out huge insurance premiums, to protect themselves against individual legal pursuit is the answer. But I do think that the big problem, and I don't have a glib answer to it, is how do you establish yourself as by which I mean a newspaper like the New European or whatever, as a continued authoritative source, and citizen journalists as citizen journalists, because that line is being very, very
blurred all the time.
Blurred on, thanks to social media. And again, citizen journalism has a place. But in the end,
nobody talks about citizen dentistry, do they?
No. Or
would you go to a citizen dentist?
When you get next time you get on a flight, does anyone say hands up who wants to pilot the plane, right? And actually, I think journalists are a bit too coy about this. It is actually quite hard to be a good journalist. I mean, it really is. And I'm not speaking personally. I just think the journalists, when I watch you and Martin Nichols, our brilliant designer, design the front page of the New European every week, I know I'm watching acquired excellence and skills at work, right? And this is not something you can just do on the back of a fag packet.
And also, to pay back the compliment, when you write 1,000 words on any given topic and it feels so erudite but easy. There's nothing easy about the way you have to go about constructing a column. You know, it's a time-consuming, thoughtful process.
Well, I mean, that's extremely kind. Thank you. But I mean, what I would say is that I think that the journalists I trust in terms of writers are those that say, even after all these years, they still think, is this, have I still, can I do it? You know, you when you sit in front of the laptop, if you don't have an element of fear, it's not working. Do
you know, and that can be a blocker, that. And sometimes I've found myself trying to tackle a topic and being unable to, because I know that I'm saying this without, these are big topics and I don't feel like I'm up to tackling it. The journalists who worry me are the ones who don't feel up to tackling a topic.
Yes.
You know, they always feel, I can do 800 words on that.
I mean, actually, the bit in the mix that I would love to see us all having the resources to restore is the layer of sub-editing.
Right.
You know, because certainly when I started, sub-editing was a high art. And sub-editors really did make your stuff better. You know, the legend has it there was a time when a brief period when the sub-editor's desk at the Times had Harold Wilson, Graham Greene and Douglas J all at the same time. That's on the sub-editor's desk.
And Graham Greene sitting there writing novels while
probably writing novels on the
between,
and I think that sub-editors are an underrated.
As a former sub-editor, I will absolutely endorse that,
because it really is an important, because the point about sub-editing to people who are outside the trade, which is almost everyone, is to take the copy of the journalist who's writing necessarily at pace and make sure that it is the right shape, is the right size, the right length, and makes sense. And I think a lot of stuff, one of the problems in terms of trust in journalism is that so much stuff basically now just gets hurled into cyberspace with no time consideration, no thought at all to its quality, veracity, or anything.
We've drifted slightly.
Sorry.
No, it was great. But if anybody is interested in the art of constructing journalism, in the writing, great book by Harold Evans called Newsman's English, and it's a forensic dive into the construction of journalism and articles, and it contains my favorite ever single article in the history of journalism, which was, it's only one sentence long, and it says something, I forget the exact location, but it says something like, Dalesborough, Ohio, Tuesday. James Robertson lit a cigarette while bathing his feet in benzene. Point. He may live. Point. Next question, please. On Tuesday, there was another tragedy in the Channel, as at least 12 people died when their boat was, quotes, ripped open. What do the Mats think of the new government's response to this humanitarian crisis? And that's from Rebecca in Dundee. Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, my immediate response is that I'm very saddened that this is still happening, because those 12 people were people. They weren't asylum seekers or refugees primarily. They were people.
Including a pregnant woman, I think.
Right. Yeah. And it's very, we talk a lot about dehumanization, but the occupants of these small boats are people. And so that's the first most important point. I mean, in terms of Labour's response, I am a bit dismayed that it's so geared to law enforcement and the language of smashing the gangs and all this. Well, up to a point. I mean, I'm sure there is a law enforcement dimension to it, but the idea that border policy and the questions of labour of population mobility in the next few decades are going to be resolved simply by sort of Robocop policy is for the birds, I think.
Totally. Do you know what? I was absolutely knocked sideways when I saw this question. I did a little bit of research, but do you know how many migrants came on small boats last week?
No, I don't know.
2,000.
Wow.
2,000 last week.
So
on the 30th of August, there were 408 migrants arrived on 9 different boats. On the 2nd of September, 351 on 6 boats. 4th of September, 257 on 5 boats. I mean, this is an absolutely chronic and seemingly unstoppable challenge.
Yeah.
The other fact that absolutely knocked me sideways is, do you know how much money Rishi Sunak pledged we would give the French police to police people trying to get across the boat?
Hit me with the order.
£500 million over 3 years. That's the same as the entire policing budget for York and North Yorkshire.
God, that's amazing.
And we've given that to the French police to try and slow down and stop this phenomenon. And I think you're right. You know, you talk about smash the gangs and all of this business. There's got to be a safe. This is still happening. There's got to be some sort of safe,
and it's going to carry on.
So anybody who says we're going to smash the gangs and that'll solve the problem,
it won't.
As far as I'm concerned, they've got the blood of people who are yet to die, but will certainly die,
and they will,
in these boat tragedies on their hands, because it's going to happen. It's massively expensive. Processing these people, it makes no difference how they get here. They're going to get here. You might as well bring them over and process them here safely, and then at least you know who they are, where they are. You can deal with them.
The investment should be on humane, swift processing.
Which, by the way, it's only a fluke of geography that we consider ourselves to be out of reach of these people, and that they've gone through nearer countries, France, Italy.
Of course.
They've all got mechanisms for processing people. We've gone over, and you can argue the toss about, well, why aren't they staying in France? Well, there are reasons you can say yes, reasons you can say no. But the fact is that they are still trying to come. The fact is they are still dying in the process. The fact is it's costing us a fucking fortune.
Yes.
And the only reason that nobody deals with it in a common sense, expedient way is political, because it's seen as politically unpalatable to be saying we'll get them over and we'll process them.
I mean, to me, it's one of the most infantile positions of the political class generally, because we badly need immigration for our labour markets, and also, you know, the decision that there should be a pluralistic society was taken about 60 years ago. So, you know, I'm afraid you're out of date, guys. And therefore, how do you make it work? How do you argue for its benefits? Because no one does. No. When did we last hear a politician make a keynote speak about, one of Labour or Tories, about why migration is not only inevitable but also a good thing? You know, and you know, good luck in having your service sector, your NHS, your social care system propped up without the help of migrant labour, whether it's seasonal or otherwise. And it's just so it's sophomoric and infantile, the way that we're, you know, it's almost unsayable, this.
And I'm afraid to say, but Labour have just,
I don't see any
they've
sign.
just perpetuated the same bullshit that the Tories were perpetuating.
I mean, I hoped, and this shows how naive I am, I hoped that the kind of fiscal caution they were showing was intended to buy them permission to talk sanity on border control, and how wrong I was. Just not right.
Right, okay, Rebecca, thank you for that
question. Thank you for the question.
Sure
it's a good
not
question.
The last time we'll talk about that.
So, the suggestively named Judas on Spotify, I like the name. I decided not to join the sheeple and contribute to the retirement fund of Oasis. Their crowds were somewhat leery. I think this report refers to earlier gigs. Yes, it does. I recall pints of glasses of piss flying through the air at the Millennium Stadium in 2005. I think it'll be Muggs of Ovaltine this time. But anyway, so instead, I bought £30 tickets to see a band who were on the same bill at Nebworth, Dreadzone, very good band, driven by the rhythm section of Big Audio Dynamite in a venue holding 500. It will be safe and civilised, and they're performing for the love of performing. Yeah, they're on tour at the moment. Very good band. Very good band.
Brilliant. Well, I agree entirely. And in fact, I'll be honest with you, the concert I'm looking forward to in the next 12 months, the most, and I am really looking forward to seeing Oasis, thanks to your largesse. And you must tell me, by the way, how much the tickets were. So I've got that on record now. But the concert I'm looking forward to the most is Canadian band, the Crash Test Dummies.
Oh, they're a great band,
who are playing Islington Town Hall. Come along with me.
I will.
They're playing on the 16th of November. And it's can you believe this? It's the 25th anniversary of that album.
Oh my God.
Of God Shuffled His Feet.
That is very aging.
And it is, but I was introduced to that album when it came out by a mate who said, oh, you got to listen to this. And to be honest with you, it's only that album that I know
but
and
it's
love.
A great album.
And they're going to play that album at Islington Town. They're on tour anyway. They're playing in Islington the 16th of November at the Assembly Hall. I'm looking now at the site. Unbelievably, there are still tickets. So book now and join the two Mats. 45 quid.
Well, there you go.
No surge pricing.
No surge pricing. And you know, whether I like to be categorised as one of the sheeple is a moot point for another day. But
it's the title of their new album.
Yeah.
Thank you,
sheeple. Thank you, sheeple. Sorted. But Judas is right. Dreadzone are a great band, and they play kind of electronic dub music, and it's fantastic. And I inspired by this, I checked, and tonight, Friday night, they are doing a gig in Shoreham by Sea. So if you're in Shoreham by Sea, go and see Dreadzone. They are really good.
Fantastic. Next,
great band.
Let's take a quick break and come back with a couple more questions. Right, next question from Roy Pierce. This is a good question, this. Please stop saying Reform achieved their election result from a standing start. This idea got a run out in the Charlie, quotes, interesting geezer Mullins interview. I mean, really...
Leave it.
Yeah, all right, we're not going back to the Charlie row. Reform are the Brexit Party. The Brexit Party is UKIP. UKIP is largely a single poisonous toad. Reform got 14.3% in 2024. Brexit Party pulled their candidates in 2019. Brexit Party got 30% in the 2019 EU election. UKIP got 12.8% in 2015. More like a relay race handover than a standing start. Keep up the otherwise good work. Thank you, Roy. But good points well made, I think.
It's a yes and no. Well, Roy's right that obviously Reform is just the latest iteration of the Nigel Farage show.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was that he wasn't involved in the Nigel Farage show until he was.
Yeah.
And what happened was that Reform went from being really not anywhere. I mean, the MRP polls were showing them not winning any seats at all.
Do you mean to say that the charismatic Richard Tice was doing bugger all without Nigel Farage?
Well, I found it hard to believe. So I went back and checked.
Without Isabel Oakeshot's amazing insight and drive and charm.
Yes.
And he was delivering nothing at the box office.
An ungrateful nation.
Amazing.
Right? But I suppose what that shorthand from a standing start means is that once Farage comes back on the scene with these pop-up parties variously named, things start to happen. And he, as Roy says, they got 14.3%, which is in line with some of the percentages that his various other parties have got before. The only twist, I think, was, in fact, and I am going to mention Charlie Mullins again, is that Reform is different now under Farage, which is that it isn't a Brexit party. It's a socially conservative party. It's anti-net zero. It's anti-immigrant. It's anti-Islam.
Yeah.
And those things are always bubbling away in the UKIP and Brexit offer. But, what's interesting is Charlie Mullins was a Remainer.
Yeah.
He didn't have anything to do with the Brexit
true.
party.
Charlie Mullins would never have voted UKIP.
No, but he's come on board with Reform. Yeah, so, I mean, Roy's right. This, Reform didn't suddenly emerge from the soil a week into the election campaign. That's true.
Yeah.
But what is also true and alarming is that Farage's involvement took it from nowhere to 14% of the vote and 5 seats.
Yeah.
But he's right. I mean, we need to look at the history of the movement.
I think that's right. And also looking at the kind of the history and the fact that, as you've just said, it would appear that basically 1 in 7 voters looks at Farage as the answer to a question. We've got to start working out what the question is.
I mean, to me, that this is the serious. The joke which we will continue to make is that the Tories don't matter, right?
Yeah.
The not funny bit is that Reform does.
Yeah. All right, Roy, thank you so much for that.
I read this week about Elle Macpherson celebrating her, quotes, intuitive heart-led approach to treating her cancer. This has led to big rows with some members of my family who believe in, quotes, alternative medicine. Can the two Matts act as a referee? From Brendan in Clapham.
So the backstory to this is that Elle Macpherson has been diagnosed with a form of breast cancer.
She had been, yeah.
Had been. She has had as I understand it, a lumpectomy.
Yes.
So it's not like she's just done a sort of Steve Jobs and said, I'll just drink a lot of fruit juice and get by. And I did do a little bit of research into the form of breast cancer that Elle Macpherson's been diagnosed with. And it's like from what I can understand in my layman's understanding, is that it's like a pre-full-blown cancer condition. So it's like where the cells have turned cancerous, but they are still within the, definable area. And so actually the course of treatment she's undertaken is one that is supported by a lot of. So she's spurned radiotherapy, she's spurned chemotherapy. She's not having a mastectomy. there's not necessarily any reason why she should have any of those things. She's had a lumpectomy, and obviously, I mean, I guess, look, if it was my wife and she came home and said, "Oh my God, this is what," I'd be begging her through purely selfish reasons, just get any medication, do the chemo, let's kill this thing completely.
Yes.
But that's not my choice. It's
hers.
It would be her choice.
That's absolutely 100% true. The words that in the question that make me want to
intuitive heartfelt.
You guessed it. Intuitive heartfelt is not a very good way to heart-led is not a very good way to make a big medical decision. Yeah. And I think the problem in all of this is that celebrities like Elle Macpherson, who's very well known, but very famous model, and has been in a relationship, let us never forget, with Andrew Wakefield, the great anti-vaxxer, have done terrible damage in their attitude to conventional medicine, because this is not her first rodeo. She's done plenty of public statements on all this.
Has she?
Yeah, and I was looking up, and there was a big study done by Yale University in 2018 of 1,000 patients with breast, prostate, lung or bowel cancer, and it showed that those who'd used so-called complementary alternative treatments were twice as likely to die as those who did not.
Wow. Yeah.
And the reason for that is that what happens is, for reasons that are intuitive and heart-led, they enter a community where they're told, you don't really need to go to.
Yeah.
And they stop going for their chemo and their radio, and so they die. And I think that's my big beef with all of this, and especially since COVID, which has kind of, turned the ratchet up on anti-science.
Yeah.
Is that conventional medicine is in a bit of a trough at the moment, and particularly on cancer, we're on the edge of some amazing breakthroughs, particularly in gene therapy, where it really does. It's a good idea to go and see your oncologist. I'm not saying that particular decision was, it's her. You're right. It's absolutely her decision, right?
And I don't suppose it's been lightly taken.
No, but if you then use your platform as a celebrity to talk about it,
you influence people.
You do influence people, and there's absolutely. I mean, I think Gwyneth Paltrow is just shy of Elon Musk in the bad vibes.
You're absolutely right.
The persuading women that these hyper expensive, nonsensical non-cures are better than going to see a licensed doctor is borderline evil. And what's really revealing about all these people, and I do get heated about it instead, because it does lead to the loss of lives, is when they defend their cures, their snake oil cures. They point to cases where it's worked, but what they never understand, or they pretend not to understand, is that the plural of anecdote isn't data, right? Yeah. And the other thing they do, which is just the giveaway, is none of them, homeopaths, chakra readers, sitters under pyramids, shamans, none of them will submit to double-blind placebo-controlled testing.
Right.
So when you and I are prescribed a medication by our GPs or whatever it is, those drugs have been through very, very complex testing processes, including the double-blind placebo system. And homeopaths won't have it.
Yeah. Well,
and to me, that just gives away the whole.
They know what the answer's going to be.
They know what the answer's going to be, and I think that there's a wonderful phrase in economics which is positional good, which is it's like the skiing holidays are positional good. It shows that you are, a bit better than everyone else, right? And health is in danger of succumbing to that, which is that it's a positional good, not to go to your GP and say, I think I've got a lump, or I'm worried about my prostate or something.
Can you give me some drugs for this?
I could. How about
something that'll actually fix
How about some 20th century medicine? Right? What you do is you go and see a shaman called Derek, who measures your shoulders and says,
don't worry about it, mate.
I'd recommend purple. That's my view.
Also, I think the media, because of course I joked about Steve Jobs, didn't joke about it. Wouldn't joke about somebody dying, obviously, folks, but I made light of Steve Jobs' reaction to his cancer diagnosis. So I did actually read into that a bit more as well. And that is a more complex story than Walter Isaacson would have you believe. And I think, you know, it suits the media to say, oh, nutty L, or, you know, barking Steve, or this is why Steve died after 7 years, you know, and he could have, if only he'd have taken the meds, it would have worked. Well, yes, but they did make complex, you know, they're intelligent people. I think the media has a role in how it then portrays their story.
I'm very much against being gentle on the advocates of alternative medicine. I like Tim Minchin's line, which is, you know what the name for alternative medicine that works is? Medicine. So that's my view.
All right. Well, anyway, we wish Elle all the very best
and Brendan,
recovery.
And we hope that Brendan's family, you know, recovers from.
Yes, indeed. Right, last question. Now that summer is over, are the two Matts excited about Christmas? From Santa Banta 007 in Billericay.
Is that his real name, do you think?
I doubt that.
Are you excited about Christmas, Matt?
Not yet, I must be honest. No, it's a bit soon. I haven't seen any John Lewis ads are when I tend to
That's
start
the first thing, isn't it? The
Christmas,
first phase is when we're invited to cry.
I love
They're always good.
Was it which one? I know it was the one before last year with the dad, the foster dad and the skateboard.
That was great. That was a good one. That was a good one. Yeah. So one of my dearest friends, Johnny Standing, who's an actor and just turned 90 in August, so happy birthday. Still tap dancing away.
Fantastic.
He was in The Great Escaper with Michael Caine. He's a great guy. He has a wonderful saying, and he is, I would say, the most generous, and he loves Christmas itself. But he says, his line is, it's always fucking Christmas, right? And he's right, because one of the things that seems to have happened here is that Christmas starts on about September the 15th.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love Christmas, right? But at Christmas...
It's right. No, you're absolutely right.
I mean, at Christmas like Christmas Eve, you know, you have the work dues, and then you Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and Boxing Day and all the, you know, carols and, I don't know, whatever, you know, Santa and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and arguments about whether Die Hard's a Christmas movie and the Muppet Christmas Carol and all that stuff is wonderful. Love it. Carol services. But I'm not alone in thinking, I think, that it starts a bit too early.
When would you have it start?
I personally
When would you mandate the public?
I would, if I had the powers of Supreme Podesta, I would ban any mention of it before fucking December, right? Because I mean, obviously people can, you know, order their... I'm not saying you can't order your food, right? But it's...
Would you be allowed to plan Christmas travel and Christmas?
You do whatever you want in terms of planning. I'm
right.
talking about sort of public displays of festive
Christmas
cheer on November the 2nd, right? Which it just
we don't want
because it's like, you know, it's a concentrated couple of weeks of overeating and overdrinking and watching films and you know, chilling out with your family and having a nice time, seeing friends and all that. But you cannot possibly turn it into an entire quarter of the financial year. Or perhaps you can. I don't know.
The thing about Christmas that I've become increasingly aggravated about is dry January, the consequence of a wet December. I mean, if there's ever a month when you need a fucking drink, it's January.
Look, I'm sober, but I find dry January irritating, right? Because it's so gestural and signalling. It's like, as you say, first of all, obviously, it's the most miserable month of the year, right? So what's the sense in denying yourself a simple pleasure, right? But secondly, it's like everyone tells you.
Yeah.
They go, actually, you you say, well, can I get you a beer or whatever? And they go, a beer? It's dry January, didn't you know? It's up there with fucking Movember, right? That is a real outrage, right? Yeah. So the answer is... Santa Banta 007 is that I think we're agreed we love Christmas.
Adore Christmas.
Bring it on. Yeah. But in a timely fashion.
Yes. And how long would you have the full 12 days of Christmas?
Yeah, I'm fine with the 12 days. I mean, I tend to hurl the Christmas tree out the door onto a passerby on sort of January
Boxing
the
Day.
2nd or 3rd. Or well, no, I know some people do, but I quite like it up at New Year because, you know, whatever. But after that, it's back to work and back to, you know, and also being journalists, we're used to working through. I'm sure you've worked Christmases, you know.
Oh God, I used to work every Christmas day, getting the paper out.
It's quite fun.
Yeah, it was, but. And I remember David Montgomery, who was our chief executive at the time. Fair play to him. I'm sure most newspaper proprietors didn't bother doing this, but
I would imagine.
he would come in a Christmas jumper with a box of 6 mince pies for about 200 people getting the paper out the next day. So I'll walk around scaring everyone for a bit and then go home for lunch. And it was all for a paper. It was the lowest selling newspaper of the year. So it wasn't even counted on the ABCs. Yeah. And it lost money because it sold so little. So it was utter exercise in
pointlessness. Of course, in those days, it was very hard to find a shop that was open on Boxing Day.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, now there are.
Everywhere. Hard to find one that's shut.
I mean, there are still Boxing Day editions, aren't there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, the only reason everybody did it was that David Montgomery decided today... This is a bit of sort of deep journalism folklore.
Law.
David Montgomery at the Today newspaper, now defunct, decided one year he was going to do it on the basis that nobody did it.
Right.
And he would sweep up the market.
Quickly discovering why
on Boxing Day Monday. So, and I think maybe one year he did it and they had a huge sale. Yeah. But then, of course, the next year everyone thought, oh, fucking hell, we're all going to have to do it now. And we're all stuck with it because of this.
No, I did it several times when I was at the Times.
Yeah. Oh, well. We won't be working Christmas Day on the New European.
No.
We'll be having our one day off.
Just the one.
Just the one.
Just the one, said Tiny Tim. Tiny Matt.
Thank you for bearing with us, dear listeners.
Happy Christmas, Santa
Christmas
Band 007.
Don't forget, get in any questions, any feedback to 2matts@tnepublishing.com. That's the number 2, MATTS, at tnepublishing.com. You can send in notes or questions on Spotify or on YouTube. Don't forget the subscription offer, folks. Please think of it as an early Christmas present.
To yourself or a loved one.
Yeah, indeed.
Or to someone you don't know.
Yeah. Go to theneweuropean.co.uk/2Matt. You get a free Tony Blair signed copy of his new book.
I bet he loves Christmas.
Tony loves Christmas.
Yes. Hi, Santa.
Cherie.
Hi, Santa. How's it
Cherie
going?
by the fire.
Santa, can I talk to you about, a few things?
Thanks as ever to our team at Rethink Audio, led by Matt Hill. And until tomorrow. We'll see you.
Have a good Sunday.
Have a great Sunday.